Welcome to Good Talk English Podcast.
So, what if the absolute greatest spiritual reset of your entire life, like a day that guarantees a completely blank slate and just erases years of baggage in a matter of hours? What if that required absolutely no physical movement at all?
I mean, that's a pretty massive claim to make right out of the gate.
Right. But I really want you to hold on to that question because today we are doing a deep dive into the day of Arafah. We're pulling all of this from a really fascinating khutbah by Dr. Omar Suleiman. And our mission today is basically to unpack the actual mechanics of this day.
Yeah, and it's so needed because people hear about it, but they don't always know how to approach it.
Exactly. We're going to look at why this specific 24-hour window is described as like the absolute best day the sun has ever risen upon. And crucially, how you can engineer a highly specific action plan to extract the maximum benefit from it.
No matter where you are in the world, which is the best part.
Yes, exactly. So to kick us off, the framework Dr. Suleiman provides it's essential because it fundamentally shifts how you approach the entire day.
It really does. I mean, this isn't just about scanning a checklist of rituals. It's an invitation to a profound psychological and spiritual restructuring.
A complete overhaul.
Yeah, pretty much. It's about stripping away all the daily noise, confronting your actual trajectory in life, and honestly, signing a binding, transformative contract for your future. But to even understand the weight of that contract, you really have to look at the origins of the day itself.
Which long predates the physical pilgrimage, right?
Way before.
And that brings us to this concept of Arafah as a, quote, cosmic anniversary, which I just think is such a compelling way to frame it.
It's brilliant.
Because when most people think of religious milestones, they think of historical events on a calendar, like a battle won or a prophet being born, a major migration.
Right, things that happen in recorded human history.
Exactly. But Dr. Suleiman is pointing to an event that supposedly happened before human history even started.
Yeah, he's pointing to the original covenant. The sources explain that Arafah actually commemorates this moment when all of humanity, and I mean every single soul that ever was, is or will be stood collectively before the Creator.
Which is just a wild image to try and picture.
It really is. And in that moment, God asked a single question,
Hmm.
Am I not your Lord? And every single human soul replied, yes, we bear witness. So the day of Arafah isn't just some celebration of a historical victory. It's literally the anniversary of your own soul's original oath.
Okay, I want to pause on that, specifically on the linguistic root of the word itself. Because the word Arafah translates to come to know.
Right.
So if the entire premise of the day is rooted in this ancient, subconscious memory of acknowledging the Creator, how does that translation actually map onto what a person is supposed to be doing right now, like today in the present day?
Well, it maps perfectly onto the spiritual progression of the individual. Like, to come to know triggers this very specific chain reaction.
Okay, walk me through that.
So, the first step is coming to know your Lord, right? Recognizing the sheer scale and the reality of the divine. But the inevitable byproduct of truly knowing your Lord is that you are forced to know yourself.
You can't have one without the other.
Exactly. You cannot perceive that level of perfection without instantly seeing your own glaring imperfections in contrast. Just strips away the ego. And not through like forced humiliation or anything, but just through objective reality.
I always think of it like the telescope effect.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, if you spend your whole life walking around your neighborhood, just, looking at the ground, you might think you're pretty significant. You have a good job, a nice car, maybe you're relatively tall.
All right, you're the big fish in a very small pond.
Yeah, but the second you look through a high-powered telescope at the infinite, perfectly ordered expanse of a galaxy, which is coming to know the Creator, you are instantly confronted with your own microscopic footprint.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that puts it in perspective.
Right. You don't have to actively try to be humble in that moment. The arrogance just evaporates because the scale of reality completely demands it.
And that realization is exactly what produces the third step in this progression, which is the most sincere form of supplication.
Because you're totally grounded at that point.
Exactly. You are no longer asking from a place of entitlement or just, going through daily routine. You're asking from a place of acute self-awareness. Dr. Suleiman actually highlights the Sayyid al-Istighfar, the chief of seeking forgiveness dua to illustrate this exact mechanism.
Let's break down the language of that specific prayer, because I know you mentioned it operates as this incredible psychological balancing act. How does it balance the scale?
So it actually starts by forcing you to acknowledge the massive, continuous Completely unearned blessings from God.
Setting the baseline.
Right. You establish this baseline of infinite generosity, and only then does it pivot to an honest admission of your own inevitable deficiency in, responding to those blessings. The psychology there is just crucial.
Because you can't grasp one without the other.
Exactly. You literally cannot fully grasp the weight of your own shortcomings until you fully recognize the sheer volume of the blessings you've been handed. The guilt isn't supposed to crush you. It's supposed to contextualize your relationship with the divine.
Which makes Arafah less about begging for scraps and way more about realigning your internal compass back to that original cosmic reality we talked about.
Perfectly said.
And I find it fascinating how this deep realization of oneness connects the absolute beginning of a person's faith journey to its ultimate peak. The source material spends a lot of time linking the Shahada, that first declaration of faith, to the Hajj.
It's a really beautiful parallel.
It is, but I kind of want to push on this connection a bit, because if a person already declared the oneness of God at the very beginning of their faith, why is the ultimate pinnacle of the religion, standing on Arafah during Hajj, just repeating that exact same concept? I mean, isn't that a bit redundant?
I get why you'd ask that.
Yeah.
It definitely seems redundant until you look at what actually happens in the years between that very first declaration and the Hajj.
Right. Life gets in the way.
Exactly. When a person first takes the Shahada, they get a completely clean slate. But then life happens. Worldly distractions, compromises, ego rust just accumulates over time.
The wear and tear of living.
Yeah, and the Hajj, specifically the day of Arafah, is an intentional enactment of death designed to completely shatter that accumulation.
Wow, an enactment of death.
Yeah, think about it. The pilgrims arrive at Arafah wearing the ihram, which are these simple, unstitched garments that they will literally be buried in.
Stripping away everything.
Right. They're physically taking off their socioeconomic status, their job titles, their wealth. They're returning to the Creator to reaffirm the exact same oneness they declared on day one. But now, they're doing it with the maturity and the scars of a lived life.
Completely uncorrupted by worldly illusions. It's basically a complete system restore.
Yeah.
And Dr. Suleiman notes that it's so foundational that every major prophet, so Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, they were all guided to say the exact same supplication on this day.
Which is incredible to think about.
Yeah. They didn't ask for kingdoms or specific military victories. The best supplication on the best day is just a pure affirmation. There is only one God with no partners to whom belongs all praise and power. You are just returning to the original coordinate.
And that shared prophetic tradition really reinforces that this isn't just some localized niche event. It is the central heartbeat of the entire monotheistic tradition.
Okay, but this brings up probably the most common tension surrounding this day.
The FOMO.
Yes, exactly. Because if the physical reality of standing on the plains of Arafah in those ihram garments is the ultimate manifestation of this system restore,
Yeah.
what is the mechanism for the person sitting in traffic in London or, working a 12-hour shift in Chicago?
Right, the people who aren't there.
Yeah, it feels intrinsically unbalanced that millions of people get to experience this profound, highly visual representation of the Day of Judgment, while everyone else just has to, navigate a regular Tuesday. How does a person access that spiritual wavelength without a plane ticket?
That's the big question. And the khutbah addresses this tension head-on by making a really critical distinction between two concepts: the makan, which is the physical place, and the zaman, which is the time.
Okay, Makan and Zaman.
Right. So there is absolute no denying the overwhelming sensory reality of the makan. Seeing millions of exhausted, sleep-deprived pilgrims covered in dust, standing shoulder to shoulder in complete humility, it is breathtaking.
I mean, the images alone are just stunning.
But here is the great equalizer. The ultimate prize of Arafah, the forgiveness, that total system restore we talked about, it's actually bound to the zaman.
To the time.
Yes. It is tied to the time zone of the day, not the coordinates of the desert.
I really want to underscore this for you listening because it completely dismantles that spiritual FOMO. You do not have to mentally transport yourself to Mecca to get the benefit. You just have to deliberately plug into the time window from exactly where you are.
And we actually see this modeled historically by the Prophet Muhammad himself.
Right, before he even went to Hajj.
Exactly. For 7 years while living in Medina, long before he ever physically performed the Hajj and stood in the Makan, he fasted on the day of Arafah. He and the early community treated it as a monumental day of intense worship, purely based on the Zaman.
So the forgiveness descends globally.
It covers anyone, anywhere, who is actively doing the work of renewing their covenant during those specific hours.
Okay, so if the time is the variable that we actually have control over, then we need to talk about how to use it.
Yeah.
How do you construct your day to capture this,
You need a plan.
right? Dr. Suleiman outlines a very deliberate, strategic itinerary. And I want to look at the mechanics of these steps, starting before the sun even comes up. He places a massive emphasis on intention. Why does the mental framing matter so much, especially if, say, physical circumstances prevent you from fasting?
Because intention is basically the currency that bypasses physical limitations.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Fasting on Arafah is obviously the primary recommendation, but the sources are highly pragmatic. Health issues, chronic illness, travel, or just, other valid life circumstances will inevitably pop up for people.
Life happens.
Exactly. The theological mechanism here is that if you make a firm, authentic intention to fast and worship, and you are blocked by a circumstance genuinely out of your control, the complete reward is recorded for you anyway.
Your psychological commitment basically locks in the spiritual dividend.
Yeah, it's a fail-safe for the sincere.
I love that. Now, let's look at the actual preparation phase, specifically the night before. Dr. Suleiman frames something as passive as sleeping as an active form of worship. And I have to say, telling people go to sleep early for the reward sounds almost too easy. Like, what is the actual function of this?
Well, it's about viewing your physical energy as a resource that you are actively managing for a spiritual goal.
Okay, making it strategic.
Right. If your default habit is, say, doom scrolling on your phone until 2 a.m., but on the night before Arafah, you deliberately shut down your screens and go to sleep early, specifically so you have the cognitive clarity to engage in deep reflection the next day, that discipline elevates the sleep.
It goes from a biological necessity to an act of devotion.
Exactly. You are strategizing for the covenant.
You are creating the conditions for success.
Got it.
And that early sleep fuels the next step, which is waking up for suhoor, the pre-dawn meal.
Which is huge.
Yeah, the khutbah mentions that the angels literally send prayers upon the people partaking in this meal. You are quite literally starting the hardest work of your day, supported by an unseen audience cheering you on.
And that momentum is so important because it carries you into the morning routine, which introduces one of the most challenging but also most rewarding practices of the entire day.
Okay, bracing myself. What is it?
The recommendation is to pray Fajr and then remain seated in your place, engaged entirely in remembrance and supplication until the sun rises. And if you maintain that focus and follow it with a short prayer after sunrise, the tradition states you secure the reward of a complete Hajj.
Wow. Okay, I really want to stop and analyze the reality of that requirement, because sitting in one spot from dawn until sunrise, which, depending on the season, could be an hour or more, with zero distractions. No phone, no checking emails, no getting up for coffee.
Good stuff.
In the modern attention economy, that is downright agonizing. Is the purpose here just to endure physical boredom, or is there some deeper cognitive detox happening?
It's a forced isolation. Think about the pilgrims out in the desert. Their physical environment enforces their focus. There's nothing else to do.
Right.
But if you are sitting in your living room, your environment is practically screaming at you to multitask.
Oh, absolutely. The laundry, the TV, the phone.
Yeah. So by refusing to move, by actively refusing to engage with those worldly inputs for that specific window of time, you are artificially creating the desert environment in your own mind.
Oh, that's profound.
It's a massive exercise in discipline that proves your priorities to yourself.
That makes perfect sense. You're building the mental infrastructure for the rest of the day. And you'll need that energy, because Dr. Suleiman makes it very clear you shouldn't just burn out by noon.
Right, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. He points out that resting and nourishing yourself during the middle of the day is a valid, recognized part of the process, much like the prophet resting at Mina. You are pacing yourself for the main event.
You have to.
And this is where khutbah introduces a concept that I think completely redefines how people usually approach prayer. He says, before you start firing off this massive wish list of everything you want God to fix in your life, you need to establish the contract.
Yes, this is where the preparation hits reality. Arafah is not just a day of asking for favors. It is a day of negotiation.
Negotiation.
The advice is to really interrogate yourself.
Yeah.
What is the one major, tangible life change you are committing to? When you raise your hands during the climax of Arafah, what is the specific behavioral contract you are offering as your signature on this renewed relationship?
I look at it kind of like signing a spiritual prenup for the upcoming year.
I mean, that's exactly what it is.
Because it's not enough to just say, hey, I'm sorry for being a flawed person. Please give me a promotion and good health. You have to actually come to the table and say, I am definitively cutting this specific toxic habit out of my life,
Mhm.
or I am committing to this specific daily act of charity. It demands collateral.
And the khutbah is quite blunt about this, honestly. If you cannot identify a single specific change you need to make in your character or your habits, you have a catastrophic lack of self-awareness.
Wow.
You're basically failing the second step of that Arafah progression we talked about earlier. You haven't truly known yourself.
You haven't looked through the telescope yet.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've done the deep work. You have your intention locked in, your physical energy is paced, and your contract is drafted. This brings us to the absolute climax of Arafah. We are moving into the final hours of the day, specifically that last hour before the sun sets.
The most important hour.
Yes. This is where the heaviest spiritual lifting happens, and Dr. Suleiman highlights an absolute non-negotiable rule for how you must communicate during this window.
The rule is absolute certainty.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning when you are making your dua, presenting your contract, and asking for forgiveness, you cannot approach it with hesitation. You are strictly forbidden from saying things like, forgive me if you will, or grant me this if it's not too much trouble.
But wait, why is that phrasing so problematic? Because to a modern ear, forgive me if you will, sounds polite.
Right, it sounds humble.
Yeah, it sounds like you're being deferential and you're not making arrogant demands of God.
It sounds polite to a human, sure, because humans have limited resources.
Right.
Like if you ask a friend for a massive loan, you say, if you can, because you don't want to burden them.
Right, they might go broke helping you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But applying that human logic to the divine is fundamentally insulting. To say, if you will, implies that God's mercy is somehow rationed, or that your specific request might deplete his treasury, or that he's reluctant to forgive you in the first place.
Oh, wow, I never thought about it like that.
The sources demand that you call upon God with unwavering certainty in his answer, recognizing that his capacity to give is completely infinite.
Which perfectly sets up what is arguably the most powerful narrative in the entire source text. It's a historical account involving the scholar Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak and the legendary ascetic Sufyan al-Thawri.
Oh, this story is incredible.
It takes place right at this exact climax of the day as the sun is dropping toward the horizon. Walk us through it.
So the scene is incredibly raw. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak approaches Sufyan al-Thawri right in those final desperate moments of Arafah. And Sufyan is on his knees, hands raised, completely broken down, just weeping as he makes his supplications.
And Abdullah looks out at this staggering sea of millions of people, right? Everyone begging for their ultimate slate to be wiped clean. And he turns to Sufyan and asks a highly provocative question. He asks, who is the worst person in this entire gathering today?
Right. And if you ask most people that question, they'll imagine someone who committed an unspeakable crime, or someone who is profoundly arrogant, or maybe a massive hypocrite.
The worst or worse.
But Sufyan al-Thawri's answer bypasses all of those assumptions. It cuts straight to the core psychology of Arafah. He replies that the absolute worst person on the day of Arafah is the person who thinks that Allah will not forgive him.
I really, really want you listening to sit with the weight of that statement, because it completely flips the script on how we process religious guilt.
It really does.
So often, we weaponize our own guilt. We think that feeling incredibly terrible about ourselves and believing we are just too broken or too sinful to be saved is somehow a sign of deep piety.
Like it's a measure of humility.
Yes, we wear our despair like a badge of honor. But Sufyan is arguing the exact opposite.
He is arguing that despairing of forgiveness on a day that the Creator has explicitly designated for infinite mercy is not humility at all. It is a massive failure of faith.
That's almost arrogant.
It is a subtle arrogance.
Yeah.
You are essentially claiming that your personal catalog of mistakes is somehow more powerful or more vast than God's capacity to forgive them.
It is the ultimate manifestation of ego hiding behind guilt. You are literally making your sins the center of the universe rather than God's mercy.
Precisely. To walk away from the Zaman of Arafah, doubting your forgiveness, is to completely reject the fundamental promise of the day. You are meant to sign your contract, present it with absolute certainty, and trust the outcome completely.
Which makes Arafah so much more than just a date on a religious calendar. It is this highly engineered opportunity to step out of the relentless distraction of your daily life, reconnect with the subconscious oath you took before you were even born, and execute a total reboot of your trajectory through strategic isolation, structured preparation, and ultimately absolute certainty.
It requires the intellectual honesty to draft a real contract and the spiritual courage to actually believe it will be accepted.
Which leaves us with a final thought I want you to carry with you as you prepare your own itinerary for this window of time. If the absolute worst, most destructive thing you can do on the day of Arafah is doubt that you'll be forgiven, ask yourself this. How much of the guilt you carry around every single day is actually just a hidden form of ego? Are you accidentally making your own personal flaws bigger than an infinite mercy just to avoid the hard work of actually changing? Think about that as you decide what goes into your contract this year.